A year had slipped by since Emily and I parted ways, and my life had wandered down a road I never could have anticipated. I had settled into a modest downtown condo, far from the house that once carried the echoes of our life together. My days had grown quiet, anchored by work, books, and the occasional outing. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave me the calm I'd longed for after the storm of our separation. Since the final court hearing, Emily and I had upheld an unspoken pact of silence. Neither of us reached out. The wounds were still too raw, and I told myself distance was the safest choice. I doubted I could face her without dredging up the anger and bitterness we'd buried. Then, one bitter November evening, as I was preparing for a quiet night, I heard a knock. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, there she was, Emily. She stood uncertainly, her eyes carrying a fragile mix of determination and hesitation. "James," she said softly, her voice unsteady. "Emily, what are you doing here?" I managed, my thoughts spinning. "I know this is sudden," she murmured, twisting her hands. "But I need to talk to you. It's important." A flood of questions rushed through me. Was she here to reopen old wounds? To drag the past back into the light? Or was something truly wrong? Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. She moved in carefully and sat at the far edge of my sofa, her back stiff, her posture guarded. I sat opposite her, the space between us heavy with everything unsaid. "It's about my father," she whispered. Her father, Richard, the man who had never hidden his contempt for me, who had fueled endless arguments between us. He had been a constant wedge in our marriage. "He's very sick," Emily continued, tears gathering in her eyes. "The doctors don't think he has long, and he's been asking to see you." "To see me?" I asked, stunned. "Why would he want that?" She inhaled shakily before answering. "He wants to apologize, James. He feels responsible for everything that happened." Her words struck hard. Richard, the man who had undermined me at every turn, wanted forgiveness. I didn't know whether to laugh at the irony or let my anger take over. "I don't know, Emily," I said after a pause. "This is complicated." "I understand," she rushed to say, her voice almost pleading. "But it would mean so much to him and to me." I studied her face, searching for hidden motives. But there were none. Only sincerity, vulnerability, and a quiet desperation. And despite everything, some part of me still cared for her. That part of me stirred now. Finally, I gave a slow nod. "All right, I'll go." 2 days later, I stood outside Richard's hospital room, bracing myself. My pulse thudded in my ears. Emily stood beside me, unreadable, her usual composure giving nothing away. At her slight gesture, I pushed the door open. Inside, Richard sat slumped in a chair, frail and diminished. The once intimidating figure had withered into a shadow. His skin was pale, his frame slight. Yet, when he saw me, his lips curved into a weak but genuine smile, his eyes bright with emotion. "James," he said, his voice rough but steady. "Thank you for coming." I only nodded, unsure how to reply, resentment and pity clashing within me. He drew in a shallow breath. "I've been thinking about the past," he said, his gaze fixed on mine. "And I see now how much damage I caused between you and Emily. I thought I was protecting her, but all I did was hurt you both." The words landed heavier than I expected, stirring an ache I hadn't felt in years. To hear him acknowledge his part in our downfall, it was painful, but strangely comforting, too. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "I appreciate you saying that, but it wasn't only you. Emily and I made our own mistakes." A faint smile flickered across his lips. "Perhaps, but I still hope you can forgive an old man for what he did." I felt the weight of years pressing down, then lifted slightly as I answered, "I forgive you, and I meant it." That conversation marked a shift. For the first time in years, there was room for peace. Emily and I didn't fall back into old patterns. We didn't rekindle love. But in the weeks that followed, as we stood together to support her father through his final days, something unexpected grew between us. Respect, a quiet companionship. When Richard passed, Emily and I stood side by side at his funeral. Not as husband and wife, but as two people who had endured much and come out changed. In the days that followed, we talked not of failures, but of memories, lessons, and how far we had each come. We didn't reunite. That part of our story was over. But for the first time in years, I could look at her without anger, without pain, only acceptance. Months later, an envelope arrived from Richard's lawyer. Inside was a modest inheritance and a handwritten note. James, thank you for forgiving me. Use this to start something new. You deserve it. Richard. As I read the words, I felt release I hadn't even known I needed. His final act wasn't about money. It was about peace. That night, when Emily appeared at my door, I never imagined it would lead here. Not to rekindled love, but to closure, to forgiveness. And I've learned since then that forgiveness is one of the greatest gifts you can ever give. Not only to others, but to yourself.